Hello, all of you I Can Do Anything podcast listeners. This is your host, Robin Steckel. Today, we will be talking with Kayla from the podcast Tragedy with a View. Welcome to the podcast, Kayla Kowalski. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
I came across your name podcast when I was, I think, doom scrolling on Facebook, and I'm not quite sure which post it was on, but you had mentioned that you had a podcast called Tragedy with a View, and I thought, with a name like that, how can you not go research it and figure out what this is all about? I did. I also reached out and said, "Hey, would you like to be on my podcast, the I Can Do Anything podcast?" And you said, "Sure." So here we are today.
Yeah, it's bright and early, and I'm pre-coffee, so if I'm slow or say a lot of I've only had one cup so far, and so
Well,
need a
I'm on
little
a
more.
half a cup. So we're
I'm
on the
ahead.
same, yeah, we're on the same path. Yeah. I'm interested in your podcast. So overall, I did some research on your podcast, but I'd really like you to give a much better introduction of your podcast. Tell us the premise of your podcast and how you got started.
Sure. So kind of getting started, I love true crime, but I can only do so much of it before um I always say that I have an overactive imagination. And so I will like either watch shows or I'll listen to true crime podcasts, or even if I'm really reading like thrillers, I can overindulge, and the next thing I know, I'll hear one of my dogs like thump a toy against the couch and I'm like, oh, someone's breaking into my home. And so I really have to limit myself on how much of that I'm consuming, but I do have this odd fascination with death. And I'm not sure that it's truly an odd fascination with death, or if I am fascinated with how we can keep these people alive. And the best way that I've found to keep people's loved ones alive is to talk about them and to talk about their stories. And so I kind of, as I got out of true crime quite as much as I have previously been in it, I have found that these natural disasters and these mayhem and chaotic moments in nature, which is something that I love. I love being outdoors, and kind of combining those two in a less violent way. Maybe violent also is not the right word to use, but you don't have someone purposefully going out and attacking another in most cases. I do have a few true crime episodes. And so the podcast Tragedy with a View is overall about all of the terrible things that can occur in the great outdoors, and things that sometimes we have control of and sometimes we have no control over them at all, and appreciating the moments that we have here in the spaces that we love with the people that we adore. And I think the Facebook post that you're talking about was actually a in a runner group. So I am an avid runner. Currently in the off season, I do races in the summer. I'm not good at any level, but I do enjoy combining the trails outdoors with my love for running. And so somebody had posted about a I think it was their daughter, and it was kind of a young girl, and her husband was like, "Yeah,
Yeah.
I can let her run alone in the dark." And she's like, "Absolutely not." And I was like, "I don't know where you're at. I don't know what your thought process is, but I can tell you that because I also love running, I also very much appreciate true crime, and I still want to be in the space without doing too much of it. So I started a kind of secondary series where 12 weeks every year I cover the stories of women who have been murdered while running. And that series is called Girl Gone Running. Um, Currently gearing up for the next release, which will start in February. And so that is kind of a side project that is wrapped in under Tragedy with a View. And it is astonishing to me how many stories there are and how different they are and how tragic that they also are in their individual spaces. And that's not to dismiss any of the other stories that I cover because they all can be very tragic, but they all can also be very inspiring at the same time.
I do remember that post now that you say that. As a young girl, there were three of us that were walking home one day, middle of Madison, Wisconsin, and a white van, stereotypical white van pulled up, two men, man driving, man in a passenger seat, asking us three little girls along the side of the road directions. And
Mhm.
we were in grade school. And I just remember thinking, oh my gosh, I vaguely remember them asking us if we wanted some candy, which was, of course, back in my day was a red flag, stranger danger. And I
Yes.
remember us three girls just running and screaming, if you can imagine three young girls screaming and how chaotic that would be. And then us running away. The van, obviously pulls away. And, I think back on it now, all these years later, and why would any adult ask three young kids directions? Like they're just not going to do that. It's no. So I do have a brief interaction with kidnapping per se or possible kidnapping, and I'm very aware, which is another reason that I was really drawn to your podcast, especially with letting a young girl go out at night running. And I just subscribe to be better safe than sorry.
Yes. For the most part, I'm like, yeah, better to be safe than sorry, but I also have I call it the uh, ask for forgiveness, not permission philosophy. And so I also have this like, what's the worst that could happen type of type of thing that will occur in my head, and I'll have those moments where I'm like, what's the worst that could happen? And now that I actually have thoroughly researched the worst things that could happen, I'm like, oh, this could happen. All sorts of things that I can control, things that I can't control, things that I've never see coming. All of these things can happen, and what do I do moving forward while staying aware of them? And I unfortunately have had a few instances where I've been running or I actually there was potentially when I was very young, uh somebody trying to kidnap me at a grocery store where I was with my mom, and it was like one of those situations where she was pushing her cart and I was pushing my little cart, and I had my doll in the front seat, and I was kind of just like being like my mom. And I just like vaguely remember two men following us, and I got like the heebie-jeebies from them. And at one point in the store, I finally just like abandoned my doll in my cart and ran up next to my mom and just kind of like grabbed her leg. And I think I mentioned to her that like those two guys have been behind us for a while. And my mom finally was like, she like looks at them and just abandoned her cart, and we left the store. And like it's like these moments that are like built into your mind of like that becomes your radar, and that becomes your these are red flags, and I need to listen to those red flags. And I think there's also a lot of people who dismiss those red flags, which is where we are today.
Yeah, I do agree with the red flags and listening to your intuition. And sometimes we think, oh, I'm overreacting, or oh, this couldn't happen in, Madison, Wisconsin in bright daylight, school just let out. But it does. It happens all the time. So listen to your intuition.
Yeah, I'm a big as you said, better safe than sorry. And you know, going home to your family is the main goal. And going home to your family with these really awesome stories is even better. And if you can do that, even if you're missing out on an opportunity, I think in in the end you'll probably be grateful, but also like don't let that stop you from trying things or, getting out there and just enjoying what you're doing and having those moments where you look back and you're like, maybe I shouldn't have done that, but try to do so in a safe manner. It's a very, very fine line that you're walking, right?
I was going to say, I really love going outside. And sometimes, if my schedule allows, I'll have, an hour and a half. And I think, oh, I can go to a quick trail. But then I'm always hesitant about, but am I going to be safe? And, what should I bring with me to protect myself? And should I really go or should I just do the treadmill? Should I just do the neighborhood? So you do have to balance not the crazy, but you do have to balance. Am I overreacting to this? Because I could really miss out on a really great walk. And I have talked to my coach a couple of times where I just thought, you know what? I'm just going to do it. I can scream, I can fight, I can do whatever I need to do as best as I can, but I'm not going to let this opportunity pass me up. And I'm really glad that I have, but in general, I am very safe when I go out solo. Well, even with others, you just you just never know what you're going to run into.
Yeah. And I work in a city. Like it's very much like we have people are out everywhere. There's restaurants, there's tons and tons of businesses. And I've had incidents where I think the two main ones that I was like actually scared for, I'm pretty sure the guy was just hopped up on drugs and he didn't have any idea what he was doing. Um, but that doesn't mean that it couldn't have ended
Mhm.
tragically as at the same time. And then the other one I'm pretty sure was someone who was suffering from a mental psychotic kind of break. And in the moment, I was terrified. And I just remember it was a lunch break, and I was like, I'm going to go for a real quick run. It's going to be 2 miles. I'll be back in 25 minutes. I like, it's going to be no problem. It was November, and I put my jacket on, and I remember thinking, um, I didn't even take my phone with me. I took my car keys and my badge to get back into work. And I was like, okay, that's it. I'm going to just go and I'm going to get my 2 miles in and I'll be back. And this guy, he was on a bicycle and he turned around on his bicycle to follow me. And I just remember like as I was realizing that he had turned around and he was right behind me, I was like, I religiously carry either pepper spray or a knife with me. And I was like, I didn't bring either of those. I don't have my phone on me. I didn't have my watch on me. I had the um sensor where it would call for or like send the alert if
Mhm.
something happened, and it was like I can't even bang my arm against a tree because I don't have my watch on me. I've got my keys. And luckily we were kind of near a main road and there was like a screech of a tire that like caught his attention and he turned towards it, and I used that as my opportunity to just run away. And I don't know that I've ever run so far so fast in my life, and I am very aware that I am not alone in that situation and that many, many, many women have stories that are very similar or worse. And that I just hope to bring awareness to all of these women who have done something that they loved and they've lost their lives because of it, and keep their stories alive and keep their memories alive and help make other people aware that this is a problem here, especially in America. This is a problem.
Yeah, it's a huge problem, especially on the forums that we are on Facebook.
Yeah.
I will definitely be listening to Girl Gone Running,
Yes.
and then I will tag you and yeah, get that out there because I think it's a really important topic.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Getting back to podcasting and your release of that coming up next year, early next year, tell me how you even thought about starting a podcast.
I like to talk. Um, the short of it is I really enjoyed talking about these events that happened and kind of getting into the nitty-gritty details. And for the most part, the people who are close to me don't want anything to do with that. They don't want to know the details. They don't want to hear, they don't want to like get into the background of the story. Like they just want to know like, all right, we've got A, B, and C. How are they connected? Type of a thing. And I I would regularly just wormhole as I would be looking up information. And I'd have like 17 tabs up on my phone and I'd be like, wait a second, I saw something over here. And like people would just be like, okay, we can move on to the next topic now though, Kayla. And I'm like, yeah, but did you know? And so I kind of needed an outlet for that. And what started out as I am now a solo podcast. So I used to have my friends who didn't mind wormholing with me come on, and I would essentially tell them the story and let them ask questions. And it it evolved from that because I got to a point where I was like, I want to hang out with my friends and I want to be able to like just let the topic evolve as it evolves rather than, okay, now we actually have to circle back to the story because we're not done yet, type of a thing. And so I didn't know how to integrate those two together. So I just kind of like shifted the podcast to my own thing. And so that's, I think it's been about a year that I've been doing it by myself. So if you listen to the earlier episodes,
Mhm.
if
I
you go
did.
too early, if you go too early, you're going to be hearing some really bad audio. But but if you go earlier, you'll hear my friends Amanda and Michelle, my fiance Sam, uh, who has been a huge support in podcasting for me because I'm very much like I don't know technology. I don't know how to do this. And so he's been the one that's helped me facilitate learning the different aspects of technology when it comes to podcasting because it's not just oh you get out a microphone and you record as you know. It's
Not even remotely close, no.
no, it's
This is the
so
easy
much
part,
work. This
Kayla.
is
This is the
it
easy part.
it is and so learning all the different programs that are out there and which one works for me and my situation and how I like to edit and finding things that are beginner friendly and user friendly was a big part for me. And he's created apps and he's an engineer. And so he has like this just wonderful understanding that I will never be able to contemplate because I'm like, if it's not on the screen, it's not an option. And he's like, no, you got to dig for it over here. And so where he doesn't quite dig the information quite as much as I do, he's very technologically capable. And I love that because anytime I have a question, he's like, I can fix this for you.
That's
And
awesome.
yeah.
I have a very similar situation. I went to CrimeCon in 2018. And in 2019, I was talking to a couple of friends, and I thought one of them was really interested in the podcasting, which she was. And I too have earlier episodes of her name is Ashley. Ashley and I doing podcasts, and then it did turn into me being solo. But had she not been a part of the I Can Do Anything podcast, I had no idea where to start. I didn't
Mhm.
realize that there were different laptops for podcasting, gaming, business. Like, I didn't even realize that there was a whole world out there just for podcasters because in 2019 it was still relatively new-ish. You know, Serial was out there, which is still my favorite podcast because that's another reason that I got into podcasting. But, and I believe it's still the number one podcast in the world because if you have
I
not
think
listened to
so.
Serial season one, it is phenomenal.
Yeah.
So that, but I too had no idea of all the different programs that you could use, how to edit. You and I are similar in that we do everything from start to finish. We don't ha hand it off. We don't have a third party doing any of our editing or dropping our podcasts. So that all is, it's ever evolving, and I need to do a revamp on what am I doing? What am I using? Are there different platforms that I could be using? I need to basically re-overhaul the entire website, and the list
Hmm.
goes on and on.
Yeah.
How do you pick your topics, which is something my my podcast is really all about people overcoming barriers, and they have an idea, they want to do something, which is why I was really interested, one, in your podcast, two, because I love the outdoors, three, we were talking about running and we had the same view on being safe. So,
Hmm.
how do you pick your topics? My topics are a little easy because it's pretty much anybody that overcomes barriers, but how do you pick your topics?
That is a good question. I have kind of a running list at any given time of stories that I've heard of that I'm like, oh, this is intriguing. Um, some of the more popular ones like Mount St. Helens eruption, and there's others where I literally just what's today? Friday? Wednesday, I released an episode about Jane Goodall. And while that's not really like a tragedy in the outdoors type of thing, Jane Goodall was a huge advocate for the environment and saving the spaces that we do have. And so she's been a huge inspiration throughout my life to be outdoors and explore and be curious. And so I just did an episode about her. Um, and then there's others that are just like so either old or there's so little research done on them, or they're talked about so little that I'm like, no, this one needs to be talked about. For example, the one of the founders of the North Face, he died in a kayaking accident in Patagonia, and he's got this whole like there's this whole thing with it. And like I've been in the outdoor space for a long time, and I had no idea that this was something that happened. And so I was like, that one feels important to talk about. We need to bring attention to certain stories. And so I actually have a calendar that I'll write down the story that I hear about on a sticky note, and I'll flip through the months, and wherever there's a week that doesn't have a story in it, the post-it goes there, and I'm like, all right, that's what I'm doing. And sometimes something comes up and I'm like, no, this is a story that needs to be discussed and I need to address it and I want to tell it. And so I will kind of push everything else off to a later date. But in the busy season, I tend to try to find stories that have more information to them. So whether there's a book or there's just a ton of news articles out there, something that's a little bit easier for me to find information. So that way the research takes a little bit less time, especially when it's like I'm getting ready for a race and I'm running 13 to 15 miles in a single day. Like I don't want to come home and have to put my podcaster hat on and start working immediately. I want to be able to sit and relax and eat some food. And so having those easier to find stories are you'll people who are like longtime listeners, they'll start to notice like, there she was really busy this season because these are three well-known stories back to back to back. And it's like, yeah, but that doesn't mean that
Yeah,
they're not good.
yeah. A couple of questions. One, how do you find the time to do it? That is, the podcasting a few years ago. So we started in 2019, and it was a twice a month drop where
Mhm.
we, drop podcasts. And I don't have any sponsorship, so it's just podcasts. There are no ads, nothing. It's all out of pocket. But that became to be a job, very tedious, because then you still have to edit. You still
Hmm.
have to basically mix it in a way to get it ready to go. Then you have to drop it. Then you have to have music, intros, outros. It's a lot of work. And it became so much for me that I just thought maybe I'll do once a month. And then life got in the way. I think this year I've only dropped 3 or 4 episodes in an entire year, and this one will drop in December. So we're almost to Thanksgiving towards the end of November right now in 2025. How on earth do you find time to drop as many episodes as you do?
Sheer determination. um, so the I have always had multiple jobs and I've always done it's almost like too much. And I look at my friends who have full-time jobs and I'm like, and they're like, I go to work out 6 times a week and I can go eat dinner with friends. And I'm a mom. And for the first 4 years, I was a single mom. So I was doing it all on my own. And the podcast did not start until after Sam came into my life and he was able to help me with my child. But the I've found as long as I can keep things on a schedule, I can accomplish everything that I want to. So my last 2 episodes actually came out late, technically. I still got them out on a Wednesday, but I needed to do some editing in the morning before I released them, and I will use lunch breaks to sit and research, and I have a tendency to I'll take my laptop, unfortunately, is on its last leg, and so I cannot go anywhere without it being plugged in. It will not work for even a minute. So I have a tablet that I've been using, and I'll have my tablet out and I'll have my phone out. One of them I'll be using Google Docs, and I'll just be typing out information that I'm pulling from the news articles. And once I have everything organized, I can get into the drafting side of it, which usually takes place as my child is going to bed because he's still in almost like a transition between like he wants me to be nearby, but he doesn't want me laying in bed with him. And so it's like, okay, I can go and like sit in the office and I can work on drafting for the roughly 15 minutes it takes for him to do his settle down routine. And then we read a book and then I can go back to drafting. And I do a lot of late nights. I don't do so many early mornings because I'm slow to start in the morning. Um, and so I utilize the lunch breaks, I utilize the late nights. I record on Sundays so that way, I have record on the Sunday so that way Monday during my lunch and after I get off of work, I can focus on editing that audio. And luckily, my stuff is all scripted. So it's like kind of as you started before, I don't know if we were recording it or not, but you mentioned that, you'll make edits and you'll make kind of like have little notes in there for yourself. And I've learned like where when you're looking at the screen of the audio and you have like all those ups and downs, it's like, I can see now where I need to cut, and you learn all those things, right? And so it's become quite a smooth process as long as I can stay on schedule. As soon as I get off of schedule, it's like the train's off the tracks. I have no idea what's happening. We're just trying to frantically get things done as quickly as I can get them done so that way I can keep on track for my listeners. And it's a lot. It is a lot. It's a
It is a lot.
whole
And
ton.
copy. And then there's copy too. What are you going to put in the episode notes? And
Yeah.
then you link out things such as, the host's website. So I will get all of your information about the podcast and how they can reach you directly, and Instagram and Facebook and all the
Yep.
things. And that takes time too. I I do remember when I probably within the first 2 to 3 years, somebody had said, how long does it take to do an episode? At the time, I did a spin-off podcast called The Consistency Club, and it was about being consistent through the year on habits, not necessarily working out, but just how do you continually make a habit? They say, a habit starts in 21 days. It takes me like 6 to 9 months to create a habit. So I don't believe the whole 21-day business, but
Nope.
when you start doing it, I had a 15-minute drop and it took me, I think, an hour and a half by the time you record it, get everything ready to go. And that wasn't even visual, it was only audio. So I didn't have YouTube, so I didn't have to get my YouTube ready to go or any of that. So it is incredibly time consuming. And as we've mentioned already, sometimes people think, oh, you just get on and talk, and then it just magically appears on Spotify and Apple and wherever else you get your podcast from. That is not how it works.
Yeah. Yeah, I think for a while I was actually tracking my time because I was like, I need to know how much time I'm spending on all of the research and all of the drafting and the recording and the editing.
Yeah.
And I think after like about 3 weeks of seeing that I was working between 12 and 20 hours on one episode, I was like, I can't mentally handle knowing that I'm doing this, especially because like I was keeping track of it when I first started. And so my numbers were much smaller, of course, when you first start than what they are a few years later. And looking at how much time I was putting into each episode and then release day having like 30 listens, I was like crushed because I put my time and my soul into this episode and I got 30 listens and maybe 10% of those people listened all the way through. Like there's a lot of people who just stop listening
Right.
because they're like, "Ah, this isn't a topic," or like, I also start listening to episodes and something will happen and I'm like, "I can't listen to this right now." And because of that, sometimes it just never comes back on and that's just human nature and there's nothing personal with it. But I I I had several times where I was like, "What am I even doing and why am I doing this?" And then I would have to like have a reckoning with myself and say, "We are not doing this for them. This is not like as much as I'm going to say like this is not for them. This is for you." But also like I want to put out good quality content for my listeners. So it is for them and I am very thankful that I stuck with it and I kind of quit keeping track of all of the time that I'm putting into these because now
Yeah,
I
don't
feel
do that.
yeah,
It's a
don't
lot of time. Don't do
it's
that.
don't it's a whole part-time job and I operate by the philosophy that a object in motion stays in motion. And so as long as you're not, you know, sitting down and doom scrolling too often, it works out.
Yeah. Another question I have for you along the lines of the listeners. I go back and forth too quite frequently about why am I doing this? It was more of a revelation probably a year and a half ago when it just became, I would say, tedious. And I thought, am I really enjoying this? And I thought, I'm not. I'm going to take a break for a while. And I did. I took several months off. And this year has just been, I dropped a podcast about the highs and the lows of the year. It has been very busy, with some great wins and some awful losses. And thinking about why am I doing this and is this making me happy? And I thought it really does make me happy as long as it's on my time frame. But the information also needs to be relevant to my listeners. And how do I get that relevance for my listeners? And that's why I didn't drop for a while because I didn't want to just put something out there. I wanted to make sure that it was relevant for me and for the listeners. So I completely understand what you're saying. Tell us about Patreon. I do know about Patreon. I have not looked into Patreon, but I'm very interested in how you got started with Patreon and what you give to your subscribers for your podcast.
Sure. I so when I like first started my podcast, I actually told myself I was never going to do a Mount St. Helens story because it was the eruption is just such a cool environmental thing that occurred. And there were, I mean, it's something that may never happen. Like, I mean, it happened before I was born. And so it's like one of those things where it might never happen again in my lifetime. Like that, something like that could potentially not happen in my child's lifetime. And it's just so cool and so special that I didn't think that I could do the story justice. And so one of my rules was when I was listening to outdoor related podcasts or books was that it couldn't be a story that I wanted to cover until after I covered it because I didn't want other people's opinions influencing my research and my story and my voice. And so I stumbled across a another similar podcast to mine called Off the Trails, and they had a Mount St. Helens like two-part story, and I was like, "Oh, that's really cool. I'm going to listen to it because I'm not doing a Mount St. Helens story." And it wouldn't work. I couldn't get it to play. And so I noticed that like it was like maybe like 6 or 7 episodes in for them as well. And so I was like, "Okay, I'm going to like I hope that they don't think that I'm like trying to be competitive or anything, like, but I'm gonna just email them and let them know that their Apple podcast isn't working. Like, I can't get any of their episodes to play. And so I just sent them an email and I said, "Hey, I'm a fellow podcaster. I just wanted to reach out because I would hope that if somebody had the experience I'm having, they would also reach out and let me know. But I can't get any of your episodes to play on Spotify. I was really looking forward to the Mount St. Helens episodes." And they responded, and we've kind of been internet friends since. And they basically said like, "Oh, like that sucks. Like I have no idea what we're doing, but we'll look into it." And in the meantime, here is the episode on Patreon. And so I kind of found Patreon through them, and they had at the time like a $1 tier, and so I backed them because I was like, these they're cool, they're great, they're phenomenal people. And they so they had this Patreon, and I was like, cool, let me see if this is something that I could use for my podcast. And so I started the Patreon. I just revamped everything because I also have a subscription service now through Spotify and Apple. So on the first Wednesday of every month, I release a subscriber only episode for the $4. It's $4.99. So I'm going to call it the $5 tier, but it's $4.99. Basically because, and I can't remember if it was Spotify or Apple, but I had very little control over the price point that I set. And so I was like, I need to match everything so that way it's fair for my subscribers. So the five-ish dollar tier has a monthly episode. I did make a mistake a couple months ago where I released the subscriber only episode to everyone, and I didn't catch it until like several hours later, and I was like, "Oh shoot." So this month I am going to be releasing like 2 smaller episodes at the end of the month just for my subscribers because I'm sorry. And whoops, I did it. There's nothing else for me to say other than
It
I did it,
happens.
and I'm doing what I can to kind of even out the playing field for them again. And so then I also decided that I so all of the money that this podcast makes, I donate at the end of the year, and it's to a charity that my listeners choose. So I've currently got a post on Patreon basically saying what where do you want to see the money go this year? And then in December I'll put a poll up and people can vote on where they want to see that money go. And then usually around Christmas is when I'll send that money over so that way it can definitely be in by the end of the year, and my listeners can know that wherever they've backed me, it's done some good. And it's that's all I want to do. I want to put good back into this world. We've got so much disaster and tragedy, and even though that's what my podcast focuses on, I want that to have a positive outcome at the end. And so the 100% of my profits go towards the charity that they choose. And so I've been going back and forth with merch. So I had a merch launch last year. I had a merch launch earlier this year. And then I kind of have been like, I don't really know if I want to do merch because there's so much overconsumption when it comes to physical things. And there's also an environmental impact to those physical products. And I very much care about the environment and I want to see it thrive. And I'm currently conflicted with whether my merch, the money that I make from my merch, is actually making a big enough impact to negate the environmental side effects of actually having that merch made and sent out and potentially sitting in someone's closet or going in the trash and never rotting away. That's probably extreme. But that's like
Well,
where I'm currently conflicted is like, am I doing enough to counterbalance this? And so I'm not sure that I'm going to be doing merch again. And I've kind of slowed down on, I don't know that I actually made any posts on social media about the merch this year. I just kind of talked about it a couple times on the podcast and I've kind of been like, let it be what it is. Um, and so I decided that instead of merch, I think I'm going to add another tier to Patreon. So there's currently a $1.99 tier when you subscribe. Um, it gets you access to the first four exclusive episodes that I released, which was on a different time frame than what I currently am on. And so then the $4.99 tier, which is also where you can get on with Spotify and Apple, there is a monthly subscriber only episode. You get to vote on what the subscriber only episode topic is going to be each month. And so that kind of gives you a little bit more control over, you're paying for essentially you're paying for a premium episode and you also get to pick the topic. And then the 6.99 tier, which is something that I just added, is going to have I'm going to do an extra quarterly episode starting next year. So it's not something that I'm throwing in right now, but starting next year, it's just going to be an extra quarterly episode. So I'm going to have like 3 months at a time to work on an extra story, which I think is completely doable if I take a day off of work and just knock that out. I'm
yeah.
half kidding about that, but
I mean, as long as you're still enjoying it, why not?
yeah. And it's something, I mean, as most people, you go through spaces where it's like, I don't know that I'm enjoying doing this anymore. And I
Mhm.
actually just went through a moment where I was talking to my fiance, Sam, and I'm like, I I was like, I kind of just want to throw the podcast away. Like, I just want to throw it away. And he's like, why? And I'm like, I don't know. I just like it takes so much time and it's so much work and I'm doing it all by myself. I don't have my friends to talk to with it anymore. And not that they wouldn't be glad to join me, but I was like, I just don't know. Like,
I'd be glad to join you. If you ever want something, I'm happy to join you.
well, I definitely every now and then I do episodes where I'm like, yeah, I definitely want somebody in on this. So I'll keep that in mind.
Please
But
do. Yeah.
I definitely I hit my stride with it again and I'm like the episodes that I'm researching right now, especially for the Girl Gone Running episodes that start in February, um, there is a rage simmering in my blood about some of these stories, and I don't want to wait till February to talk about them. And I'm actually like I took a whole day off of work today to knock out. I've got 4 episodes ready for that, so I'm gonna go ahead and record them today, and I'm gonna be able to edit them over the next couple of months and start working on getting those out so that way people can hear and listen to the complete stories. And one of them that I'm working on in particular is just it's so maddening and it's brutal and it's terrible and it hurts. It hurts to know that so many people have gone through this, and it makes me mad. And now that I'm mad, I'm like, let's get into the podcast. Like, we're diving in on every single topic I possibly can. It's probably
Mhm.
one of those things where it's like I'm more working because I'm feeling big feelings, and I'm not yet ready to process those feelings, and so I'm just working more. And the plus side is that I'm enjoying the work. So I'll do that, and then once I get those 12 episodes wrapped up is probably when I'll sit back and be like, "Whoa, this is really heavy and this is really dark and it's really hard." And I can take the time to process that, every time. And it's not just for runners, but every time you step anywhere. I mean, I was going to say step out of your house, but
Mhm.
things happen inside homes too. And,
Sure.
you got to not take life for granted and appreciate what you have while you have it.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful. Uh, Definitely. I feel very similar to you, probably because of our similar backgrounds in what happened to us as we were younger. Again, always pay attention to your instincts. And truly, if you really want somebody else on your pod, I would love to join you and talk about things. I'm really into true crime. Obviously, that's how I got my start in podcasting. So I'm definitely up for the challenge, would definitely do it, enjoy it. I think that your podcast is amazing. Like I said, I've listened to quite a few episodes. The Mount St. Helens was something that I really enjoyed. I was alive during that time. I was young. I was young.
Do you
And
remember it?
I do
Okay.
remember it. I remember I was about 10 or 11. And I do remember the front page of the Wisconsin State Journal had, the huge picture of Mount St. Helens erupting. And I had relatives that still live in Spokane, Washington. And I remember getting a baggie and a figurine of, probably a few years later, but of the ash from Mount St. Helens. And I had kept that ash in the baggie for years. I bet I finally threw it away maybe 15 years ago. I mean, I had
Okay.
it that long. So that was really interesting for me. And what I really enjoy about your podcasts is that you really bring the outdoors inside. So whether you're listening outside or whether you're listening in your home, I feel like when you're explaining things, as you say, get into detail, I feel like I'm there. So I felt like I was with the man at Mount St. Helens and thinking, well, is this eruption really going to demolish my home and my land and where I've lived forever? And yes, it did. But you you said it in such a way that I could put myself into that man's perspective to say, yeah, this isn't going to bother me. It's not going to erupt and it's not going to ruin anything. And of course it did, which was
Mhm.
definitely a tragedy. I felt very similar to the parents of the young boy that was missing on a hiking trip. And I just, oh, you feel the feels. And I think that's a part of what really hooked me onto your podcast was that I really felt like I was there with the people involved. So kudos to you for doing that because that's hard to do.
Thank you. That's a huge compliment. I really appreciate you telling me that. Thank you.
Yeah. So for all of my listeners, I will be posting the link for Tragedy with a View. And Kayla, anything to wrap up that you want my listeners to know about before we end for the morning?
As if I haven't said it enough in this last, I don't know, hour. Appreciate the people around you. Love them, hug them, tell them all the things, and make sure that if you were to take one more step and no longer be on this earth, I want you to know that you've done what you needed to and told the people that you care about how much of an impact they've had on your life. And also be kind and be aware not only of of your surroundings for yourself, but also for others around you. And if you can help, do so. And sometimes that means staying out of the way. That let the professionals do what they do. But if you're in a space where you can help, do that.
I think that's a great way to end the podcast. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed this morning.
I did too. To all of my listeners, stay awesome and keep reaching for your ending.